Hello, and a very warm welcome to a YouTube channel by the name of Dr. Ahmed. Today, I'm going to record a video lecture on a very famous, very important, very significant novel of Charles Dickens. Previously, I had already recorded one video on the introduction to the writer, and today it is going to be the introduction on a most important, very significant novel by Charles Dickens, A Tale of Two Cities. I am in love with this novel especially because of two reasons. Number one, it is a historical novel and it goes to talk about the two neighboring countries of Europe, that is England and France. And this novel discusses these two countries in the context of French Revolution and its religious and non-religious movements as well. Besides that, I see here number of characters which are really very, very fascinating, like it is the character of Dr. Manet, Lucy Manet, and it does have the type of similarities or the pairs one can say, and especially the pair is that of the protagonist in this novel. So therefore, these things make it very beautiful, very interesting, and it conveys a very deliberated message of Charles Dickens that in history such events have been taking place, what were the causes of such events, and how did these events result into something very bad somewhere and something very good somewhere. So that is why the novel he begins with the very famous sentence, that was the worst of time, it was the worst of time, it was the best of times as well. So let's have a start with this novel. Hopefully, we shall be trying to understand the basic idea behind the novel, the characters in the novel, and the themes of the novel. On these 3 points, the whole discussion will be based upon. So let's enter into it and let me show you the title. And that title goes to say A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. And as you can see in the picture, that one picture is that of London, other picture is that of Paris. So the very title of the book is going to introduce to us how and in what way these two cities, these two countries will be talked about. So the title also has doubleness in it. Same is the case with the places, same is the case with timing, same is the case with characters in the novel. So that is why we should expect certain parallelism, paradoxes, and one can also say the two of everything in the novel. Let me take you to the next point. And here, before I proceed further, I would like to say that this presentation, PowerPoint presentation, which is in Acrobat Reader format, is not prepared by me. It has been copied by me from certain sources. So I don't claim that it's prepared by me. I'm just discussing this with reference to this PPT and trying to explain the things for the betterment of my student, as it was a free source, so that is why I have also used it. The credit of this PowerPoint presentation may be going somewhere else, but I am here discussing the novel with this support. So let us proceed and see what the next slide says. Like first slide is about the introduction to the novel, as the title of our discussion is also there. In the very introduction, we have 3 to 4 important points. As you can see here, first of all, we have the statement that it's written by Dickens in 1849. Probably everyone knows that the novel A Tale of Two Cities is by Dickens, but very few may be remembering that it was written in 1849. And this is important to know because most of the examinations these days being held for the job of lectureship and that of the competitive examination, such things become significantly important that the student or the aspirants or the candidates should remember. That is why the date is very important, or the year is very important, 1849. And then comes the next point, that it's written in 3 parts. Dickens has maintained the beauty of this novel by dividing it into 3 parts, because unless we divide this novel into different parts, we are unable to have the sections of the story. It is sometimes difficult to understand the whole story, especially when it is about different places, about different people, about different times at that time. If sectioning is not done, At that time, the story becomes a jumbled story. Dickens has taken special care of that by dividing the novel into three parts. And perhaps he's the harbinger of the post colonial novels or post war novels, because in post colonial novels also, we have different sections of the story so that the story may be interlinked as well and separated as well. Same thing Dickens has done. So I can say that Dickens was ahead of his times, at least by hundreds of years. And then the third point is that released one part at a time throughout 1849. So this is again another reason that why it is having three parts, because Dickens released only one part at a time. This novel was set against the backdrop of French Revolution. Now, this is one of the very, very important things which I have tried to talk in the beginning introduction to my lecture as well, that this novel becomes significant because here the event of French Revolution has been talked about. I hope students of literature do remember that this French Revolution has been talked and discussed by many writers of literature. Wordsworth, the poet, has already written one poem with the very title French Revolution. So I can say that the intelligentsia or the intellectuals of Europe were fascinated, were very much interested in the French Revolution, because according to them, it was about to give liberties, freedoms, freedom to speak, freedom to talk, freedom to discuss your ideas. And this was the hope attached to it. And Wordsworth possibly became disillusioned, and later on, he did not recommend French Revolution. But there could be different views about French Revolution. Our concern is to see what was working behind when the French Revolution was about to come, what kind of atrocities, what kind of cruelties were committed by the people, by the powerful class, and by then, as a reaction by the poor class as well. So that is why the mention of French Revolution here makes it very much significant. And the next thing that we can talk about the story of the novel that begins in 1775. Now, Dickens is writing the date in 1849, and then the story in the novel begins in 1775. So it means that he takes us back in the history at least by 45 to 50 years. So that's again one of the dexterous and complicated art of Dickens, which he is showing in his novel. Let's proceed further and see what else we can discuss. The point is about the main characters. The main characters in the novel are, first of all, Charles Darnay. Charles Darnay, he's a protagonist of the novel, and he's a young man, he's a very honorable person, and he was born in French nobility, but he somehow rejects the aristocratic Evermonde familial ties and works as a French tutor in England, arrested by the French emigrating, wins the love of Lucy Manet. So that is important to talk about this novel and this protagonist. Why is he important? For example, I have told you people that it's Charles Darnay who's the protagonist, and he is the person who was among the French people, but he didn't like the manners and the ways of the French people, even of his own family, and he migrated to England, and there he did two important things: that he taught French to the people, and secondly, he also won the love of Lucy Manet. Lucy Manet is a person who is definitely female protagonist of the novel, but she's also one of the important characters to play a very important role that we shall be seeing later on. So this much one can say about the character of Charles Darnay, that he was the important person in the novel, and he is the one who migrated to England, and there he taught French, and he got the love. And he was arrested as well. Now here is the big question: why was he arrested? In fact, this is the very point from where the conflict in the novel begins, the arrest of Charles Darnay. Because on the one hand, the English people would not accept the migration of the French people into their country. On the other hand, the French people themselves wouldn't allow this type of migration, that somebody should migrate to England and live there and try to defame their French country. They would also be behind this person. So in this way, in fact, he had put his life into great jeopardy by migrating to England and by falling in love with a woman who is supposedly the English woman, although she's not. So in that way, the problem arises with his migration, Charles Darnay's migration to England. So let's proceed further and see what other things can be talked about this. So here is Lucy Darnay, and the name therefore goes to suggest that Lucy is the wife of Mr. Darnay. She's a loving and compassionate woman. She's the daughter of Alexander Manet, marries Charles Darnay. So before I go further, I can point out here that she's the one who's the daughter of one person uh, who is, Dr. Alexander Manet. Now, Dr. Alexander is in France, he's not in England, and she's the daughter of that person. So from the outset, we have an idea that this girl was not the English girl. She was the daughter of Dr. Manet, who was so much popular among the French people. So in that way, some of the realities are being told to you people, because in the novel, the accusation on Charles Darnay will be that he married one woman who was an English woman. Being a French person, he shouldn't have done so. In that way, he could be considered a traitor by the people who are bringing revolution. So, in that way, continuing further and trying to understand what is with this woman, she is a selfless person. She loves her father very much indeed. The story of the novel goes to prove that she was in love with her father and puts her life in risk in order to meet her father. She is the lover of Charles Darnay as well, and then she has the person who's got the golden thread for her father. This golden thread is the hair that she's having on her head as a blonde. She has the golden hair. This golden hair is also in the finger of the father, and that is why he's able to recognize his daughter from the color of the hair, style of the hair. So in that way, the golden thread is really very important in the life of Dr. Manet as well as that of Lucy Manet. Then we have this Dr. Manet. He is started as a thriving doctor with a beautiful family, imprisoned in the Bastille prison for 18 years, becomes deranged and withdrawn, cobbles shoes pastime, nursed back to life and vitality by his daughter. Now, Dr. Maynard, being a doctor, is a very successful doctor. He's been treating a number of people, sometimes free as well. But again, he was also arrested and put to the prison, Bastille, and lived there for 18 years. But this prisoning brought a number of effects and influences on him, that he became, up to some extent, mentally disturbed. And instead of doctoring his own profession of being a doctor, he started to doctor the shoes. I mean, he started to make the shoes, mend the shoes, and was all the time doing the same thing. And even when his daughter, Lucy, goes to meet him, at that time also, he was mending the shoes. So that was the kind of characteristic developed by him. Excuse me. His daughter is the instrumental person that she brings him back to life with her love, with her care, with her nursing. So in this way, one mind, brilliant mind, is converted into mad mind with the cruelties of the prison, and that loving, passionate, and helping doctor is converted into a kind of patient. However, his daughter is responsible in bringing him back. So this is the character of Dr. Manet. Now we have another character, that is Sidney Carter. Sidney Carter again is a character which doubles the character of Charles Darnay. Because like Charles Darnay, he's young, he is dynamic and a very redeeming character. He's a lawyer, very intelligent one. But he was the person who was a merry-making person one. He was Epicure's own son, because all the time he was wasting in drinking and indolence. He was not interested that much in his life. He also fell in love with Lucy, uh, and is, unable to marry her. She marries Charles Darnay, and this therefore becomes the type of problem for him. And so he is still in love with that girl, and is ready to sacrifice his life for the sake of that girl. And really, he sacrifices his life by saving the life of Charles Darnay and his family by replacing himself, by replacing himself with Charles Darnay in the prison. Now, this is possible because his looks resembled very much to the appearance of Charles Darnay, and so in that way, a great heroic example of love, of falling in love, and of then sacrificing for the sake of love, that has been done by Sidney Carton. So in that way, Sidney Carton proves himself to be a very great loving person for this beloved Lucy. So far, we can stop for a moment in proceeding further and try to discuss what we have done. So far, we have only these three characters. Two are young people falling in love with the same woman. One marries her, another only sacrifices himself for the sake of that woman. But his sacrifice brings happiness not only to his beloved, but also to the family and husband of that beloved. Such is the kind of love portrayed by Dickens in his novels. Proceeding further, some of the minor characters now are there. Among the minor characters, a very dangerous but very clever character is Madame Defarge. If you could look at the picture, that is the real description of Madame Defarge's characteristics. She's not a protagonist, rather, she should be taken as an antagonist. She is the person who leads the French peasantry, I mean the farmers, into the liberation on the eve of French Revolution. She's a bloodthirsty woman, and in that way, she's a very clever, malicious woman. She brings destruction on number of people, and number of aristocratic people are killed by her. And she is the one who's responsible for arresting Darnay. She's able to do that, and she tries to kill Darnay, but she dies in that attempt because the nurse of Lucy, she is able to kill this woman. So in that way, the destruction brought by this woman has brought the destruction on herself as well. And the same tone, if we say who was the person responsible for the death of this dangerous woman, it was the nurse of Lucy, who was Miss Pross. Miss Pross is a very faithful type of person, virtuous person, has a golden heart, as we say. She's a good woman. She is for the call of duty all the time taking care of Lucy's family, and she's the one responsible for protecting, and that is why she kills Madame Defarge at the very critical moment when Defarge was just able to kill Lucy or some other part of the family of that person. She killed instead Mr. Defarge. So in that way, Miss Pross's character is really a very powerful type of character. She is, although shown to be an old woman, but she is very active and she is able to kill the kind of dangerous woman like Mrs. Defarge. So that is the reality of this character as well. Let's see more what other characters can be there by reading the novel one can find. A few of the settings should be talked about also, so that the reader may be having a good idea of that. For example, first of all, Tellson Bank, which is in London, is very important. The Tellson Bank is discussed again and again, the procedure and the things and the relationship of Tellson Bank with Lucy Manet and her father, that has been talked about again and again. Bastille, the prison, is in France, in Paris, that has also been discussed again and again. So these are two main places talked about. The third main place is Defarge's wine shop in Paris. That's also important. Again, these are the settings where the story altogether takes place. Some of the symbols have been used there. First symbol is the breaking of the wine cask. That's a very important symbol because, as the novel says, one big wine cask falls from the cart and falls on the ground. As a result, the wine splits itself on the road, and the poverty stricken people run forward to gather that wine. Some people gather it in their hands, but other people try to lick that wine as well. The scene is really very fascinating where people are licking the wine. That goes to show the divide between the rich people and the poor people, because the poor are unable to have access to such wines, and that is why when the casket is broken at that time, the people try to lick that road even where the wine is broken. So this is symbolic of the poverty of the people. But then the color of the wine is red, and that color is the color of blood also. And so in that way, the splitting of the wine means actually the splitting of the blood, and that was the indication of the revolution and its fallouts with respect to the people who wanted to take revenge, the bloodshed that was expected out of that. So symbolically, it has been used in order to point out what possibly splitting of things can be. The second is the knitting, continuous knitting by Madame Defarge. Whenever one looks at, she is knitting. But after the revolution was in place, she started to knit in such a way that she would, if she has to give the decision of killing someone, she would start knitting in order to say that this much time should be given in order to kill a particular person. So she would start knitting, and as soon as the knitting would stop at that time, the death of the person would take place, the person would be killed. So knitting, which may be responsible for bringing two things, opposite things together, it here has become the knitting of time, the closing of time, and the closing of life and breath of a person. So in that way, Mrs. Defarge, Madame Defarge's knitting has been used symbolically in the novel. And so in that way, the novel continues to proceed. Dickens has a very important style of writing, and out of these style, we have got certain details, that we have detailed sentences which goes to talk about life also, which go to talk about death also. Dickens portrays the realistic scenes too. There are certain speeches which may be possibly boring or pedantic, I mean very scholarly, and then there could be certain other speeches which are full of the violence and the bloodshedding which is going on the streets of France or Paris, one can say. So this all is going on in this novel, and this has been very visually described by Dickens. No details have been hidden, and some of the ideas are reinforced through repetition. Reader is able to see that the things are repeated again and again just for the sake of reinforcement. Some of the themes and philosophy is also present in the novel, but mainly it's the violence, it's oppression of the revolutionaries. Madame Defarge is the embodiment of violent tendency. Dickens does not like this. Dickens declares her to be a very violent character, but it's because of the oppression of the aristocratic people, and these violent acts Dickens, however, does not justify. But the death of Madame Defarge goes to say that Dickens is disapproving the death and bloodshed scattered by this woman, Madame Defarge. So in that way, some of the possibility has been shown through the symbolical resurrection and re-emergence of Dr. Manet in the society. If he was, first of all, fallen a victim to these things, and secondly, he comes once again back to life and trying to become normal. That is the type of disturbance of life, and then coming back to life as well. Carden's giving his life to save Darnley again is the spirit of sacrifice that is again establishing itself. Carden envisions a renewed Paris after the revolution. There will be peace and prosperity. People have given lots of examples, lots of things to show that how this novel is going to be beautiful. But to my view, novel is again and again beautiful when we talk of the characters and the timing or the history which has taken place, and about which the novel goes to talk in detail. Above all, Dickens' style, Dickens' love for writing, his way, how he depicts and portrays the characters and the scenes, that again make it beautiful. So the students need to remember these things that I talked about. It was just an introduction. The more details can be captured when one enters into the text of the novel, and really it is enjoyable novel. But then these details, if are pre-reading considered, one can make the reading very easy. So it is all about the introduction to this novel. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully we'll be meeting once again in another video. So far this much is sufficient. We shall be meeting again. Thank you very much, and take care of yourself.